Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing, as well as analysing, tech news which, as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. Hopefully, you're having an amazing day. We have a ton of stuff to get through in today's video. There's only going to be a single video for today because I'm working on an Xbox Series S script. I asked on Twitter, and a lot of people actually wanted me to put out a video focused on Microsoft's smaller brother for the Xbox Series X. So now that we have official confirmation to the specs of the system, I figured that that would be a good option. And I'm also working on another exclusive for AMD, which is going to focus a lot on GPUs. It was actually supposed to come out today, but literally I got done filming and then it was like, oh, yeah, I had more information that came last minute, so it rendered a lot of what I filmed kind of pointless, and yeah, it's been a thing. But I do want to put a news video out today because, quite frankly, there is a lot of stuff to talk about. The first is Big Navi, and this has emerged thanks to Billy. Hopefully, again, I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now, what we don't know about this specific GPU is the configuration. The leaker is claiming that it's a 256-bit interface. They're saying that there's 8 memory modules. We'll get into the memory configuration in just a moment though, but I want to kind of talk about some of the obvious other things you can see here. Now, this is definitely not a retail sample GPU. There are a plethora of things which you'll notice, including various dip switches. There's voltage measurement points there, so obviously this is for bring up purposes, for testing. The cooler is not exactly something that you would expect. It basically looks like something you would throw onto your processor. Again, that's because they're bringing things up and the cooler and some other things are being finalized. I have to be careful how I word things because I've been asked not to say a few specific things, unfortunately, at the moment. Regardless, though, what we do know is that AMD will be holding an event on the 28th of October. So it won't be too long until we officially learn an awful lot about what AMD will be doing for the next generation GPUs. And I am still very confident in their performance. And there is a couple of things. So the first is that when it comes to the memory configuration, I am hearing an awful lot of rumors and conjecture. One thing I'm hearing is that it's a 512-bit interface for the higher-end cards, but the problem is someone else is telling me that this is not true, and instead it's a narrower bus. And unfortunately, this is ironically one of the major mysteries which is left to me. Like, the memory configuration is usually the thing that leaks out first, but I can't seem to get an answer as to the memory. What I am certain of is that for the gaming cards, we're looking at GDDR6 as the focus for AMD. Obviously, something like Arcturus, which is the MI100 series, again, that would be for data centers, that type of stuff. That is going to be HBM2, but for the gaming-focused GPUs like the Radeon RX series, those will be powered by GDDR6 memory. And what you will also notice too is that there are 2 power connectors for this. The reason I find that quite interesting is because what we do know about the cards is allegedly they're very power efficient. But it's possible that even if they are power efficient, AMD would opt to have, well, more power connectors anyway, especially if they've decided to crank up the clock frequencies. I was told that the higher end cards initially had a kind of target of 250 watts. But, as I covered just quite recently from my own information, AMD were playing around a little bit now that they know essentially what Nvidia have been kind of aiming at. And from a couple of my sources, I can say very confidently that AMD are not surprised by what Nvidia actually achieved with their GPUs. They actually pretty much guessed the level of performance that Nvidia would be aiming for, and so they still feel internally that they can compete with this. I would, of course, preface this by stating, well, first of all, wait for benchmarks, and B, I have a lot of questions as to the feature set. Yes, we know the cards have got hardware-based ray tracing, but what's the performance? But there's a ton of other things, of course. Hardware-based ray tracing is great, but what about other features like DLSS? Now, I know that there is a lot of negative association with DLSS in the PC community, but DLSS 2, as regular viewers will know, I'm a big proponent of. But DLSS is Nvidia's proprietary technology. It is not on the consoles either. Please stop saying that the PlayStation 5 and Xbox have DLSS. What they do have is, of course, upsampling technology, and I believe that AMD has this too for the RX 6000 series, but how good is it, image-wise, compared to Nvidia's technology? What's the performance penalty? Those are questions, unfortunately, that I still do not have answers to as of the time that I am recording this video. But what I can tell you, and this is a bit of a tidbit, is a few things for the Zen 3 stuff. So one thing that I can definitely say is that AMD are very happy with Zen 3's gaming performance. Now, I want to stress, not overall performance, I want to stress this is gaming related. I've been told that Intel will definitely be on notice when it comes to the gaming performance of the Ryzen 4000 series, and this is for a plethora of reasons. The fact that at this point the Unified CCX is all but confirmed, I've heard that from multiple people, and even not an Apple fan has just DM'd me that as well, although I will say that the performance information I got from some other source, and I need to be very careful how I word this, but internally, AMD, as well as many of the partners that AMD are working with, seem extremely confident in what Ryzen 4000 is going to be capable of. Of course, there are a plethora of things which make gaming performance, and a lot of this as well comes down to things like latency. Again, latency is a really big subject, and while memory bandwidth sounds really sexy, you know, like a CPU has got access to DDR4 memory and all of this stuff, that's great, but when you just tweak memory timings of caches or something like that by just, you know, several nanoseconds, or just increase the communication speed between one core to another, it can have massive ramifications to the performance of a system, particularly when it comes to gaming performance. So I personally believe that this is going to be a really good thing for AMD. And now I would like to mosey over to some console-related news, because by golly gosh, with Microsoft now confirming, of course, the price for the Xbox Series X and S, along with the specifications of the Series S and even the release date, which again is going to be the 10th of November this year. One question still remains of what is the prices for the PlayStation 5. So the rumour is that Sony soon will be announcing the price and more for their console. So again, they were waiting for Microsoft to make the first move. Phil Spencer on Twitter had said that Microsoft had actually intended to reveal these details next week. So basically, they were essentially forced to do things ahead of schedule. I will say that the team acted pretty damn quickly, given that they were caught essentially with their pants down. But, I mean, you could always argue that it was a deliberate leak. I don't think it was. I think that oftentimes there are definitely deliberate leaks from any of the companies, but I don't think in this instance Microsoft actually leaked this stuff by accident. In the past, I definitely think they have, as has Sony, but I think this is one of those instances they did not mean to leak this early. But interestingly enough, there are some reports floating around that Sony have actually responded internally to the price of the PlayStation 5. So for the PS4, this is going back a bit, obviously, Sony basically set the price of the console essentially the last minute. This is not unusual in technology. Prices for things like CPUs, GPUs, blah, 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 can basically be... those decisions can basically be made before the person walks up on stage. I mean, that's pretty much what happened for the RTX 20 series. Jansen famously made the decision like just a few hours before he went up on stage, and the same thing, of course, for the PlayStation 4. Sony basically decided on the pricing to undercut what Microsoft were charging for the Xbox One. But the rumour is that, according to GameReactor.eu, Sony internally have decided to reduce the price. Now, originally the console was set to be higher than the Xbox Series X, although considerably is a bit of a difficult statement to quantify what is considerably more expensive. To someone, it's $50, to others, it's $200 more. So, but let's just say that Sony were considering $599, if this is true, and I don't know whether it is. But apparently, according to this information, Sony are now considering for the high-end console, $499, or I say high-end, it's the version with the disc drive, and then the digital-only system is going to be $399. Now, I know what you're going to say, well, why the hell would Sony charge only $400 for the digital-only console? I've said many times, I think that this is a likely price, simply because it ties you, as a consumer, into the ecosystem of Sony's, well, control. Essentially, you cannot buy used games from GameStop or whatever. You cannot have these games traded to you. So you're basically at Sony's mercy. If I were Sony, I would do any and everything I could to ensure that people got a digital console if I possibly could. Because ultimately it means that you are given fewer choices on how you're purchasing the games, and obviously that means Sony makes more money. So if I were Sony, I would prefer to even possibly eat a small cost up front if I could just get someone locked into the ecosystem. But of course, this is, again, definitely not confirmed pricing. Also, there are a couple of reports floating around that we may see a late November release. It's at least for some regions of the world for the PlayStation 5. It was pretty well understood that the PS5 will release on the 13th. It had been leaked at several points of November. But we then started to hear rumours that the PS5 may release later in other regions. I got told that Sony were considering several days later for the European region, the UK and Japan, but I did put that out as a video. But interestingly now, Gizmodo Japan have stated that the PlayStation 5's controller charging stand is available on Amazon Japan with a release date of the 20th of November. And there's also a floating grip wall mount for the PlayStation 5, which I've got to admit, I don't know if I'd be comfortable wall mounting my PlayStation 5. I mean, more power to you, I guess. I don't know how the console would look, honestly, like that. But, well, you know what, that's beside the point. Anyway, the release date for that product is allegedly going to be the 19th. It is possible that these are placeholder dates, or don't have anything to do with the PlayStation 5. So, for example, maybe they feel that they want the system to be available, maybe they need a bit of time, maybe they, need time to kind of actually get the parts on store shelves, whatever. So it's definitely possible that we won't have the release date of the 19th for the PS5 in, say, Europe. It could be the 13th, or it could be an entirely different date. But it is interesting now, we're seeing a ton of evidence that Sony will launch the console at a later date compared to in the USA. If I had to guess, and this is purely a guess, Sony are probably more concerned about the US because it's typically a very strong sales region for Microsoft. So I can see the appeal of ensuring that you release there first. Make sure that you focus on the area where you feel that you could lose some ground. I think one thing Microsoft have done very well is the plans to kind of purchase the console over several months. Obviously, it's $25 or $35 for the Xbox Series S and the Series X, respectively. And this, to me, is a really great way to get into the next generation. I wonder, though, if people, if they're primarily PC gamers, will opt for the PlayStation 5 as a companion console, but if they do not primarily play on the PC, and they are choosing instead to stick to the console ecosystem, a really good argument would be to either pick up a PlayStation 5 or a Nintendo Switch, and then pick up an Xbox Series S if you don't care necessarily about having the highest quality resolution and you just want a secondary console to be able to play like Microsoft titles. It'll be very interesting to see how all of this plays out, honestly. I'm really hoping that there's no major shortages for the hardware. I'll be curious to see how the pre-orders actually fare for both Sony as well as Microsoft. But with all of that said, thank you very much for watching the video. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, that would be awesome. But for now, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.